Welcome to the deep dive. If you're looking to cut through the noise and really get to the core of what matters, well, you're in the right place.
Hmm.
We basically take a key set of ideas, we pull them apart, and give you the essential insights, the stuff you need to be seriously well-informed, fast.
And today, we're digging into a thinker whose ideas on power, honestly, still feel incredibly sharp centuries later. Nicollo Machiavelli.
That's right.
We'll be looking at excerpts from his major works, but also thinking about how they land in our world today.
Exactly. So, our mission for this deep dive really is to explore how Machiavelli's, let's say, observations on manipulation, leadership, appearances, how all that resonates now.
Right.
We're looking at how these ideas show up in, the online personas of leaders, the influence of tech, corporate strategies, all that stuff.
So maybe let's start with how leaders present themselves. Machiavelli had that famous line, people judge more by the eye than the hand.
Yeah.
How does that hit you, thinking about modern politics or business?
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that. It feels spot on, doesn't it? Especially now. We constantly see politicians, CEOs, everyone really, putting so much effort into crafting an image.
Hmm.
It's almost like the appearance of being good or competent or relatable. That's become the main thing, more important than the reality sometimes.
Precisely. I mean, look at the political landscape. You see politicians very carefully cultivating this relatable online presence, right? Sharing these curated glimpses of their real lives.
Oh, definitely.
Machiavelli might just see that as, well, a modern way to apply his advice. You have to manage public perception. It's a tool.
Right, like that example we looked at, the humanitarian hawk, the politician who makes a big show, very public about caring for refugees.
Mhm.
While behind the scenes, maybe they're supporting arms deals that actually create more refugees. The image is compassion, but the actions, well, they tell a different story.
And you see the same dynamic in the corporate world? Absolutely.
Mm.
CEOs making big public gestures about social responsibility. It gets great press. But the core business practices, they might be, let's say, ethically complex. Machiavelli would probably call that strategic image management, building reputational capital.
The conscious cannibal CEO example really nails it. Tweeting about mental health, employee well-being.
Right.
Well, maybe their company's algorithms are designed for maximum engagement, which can mean anxiety, or the labor conditions aren't great. That clash between the performance and the reality.
Machiavelli's core insight, I think, was that for a leader, prince, CEO, whatever, just appearing to have good qualities is often more useful, politically speaking, than actually having them.
It becomes about perception management.
Exactly. Even if the substance isn't quite there, the focus shifts.
It's like, yeah, the packaging is more important than what's inside. And this pressure to craft the perfect image, it feels like it's at an all-time high now, with constant online scrutiny and everyone having a personal brand.
It does. And well, this focus on appearances, it naturally leads us to think about double standards. Strategic hypocrisy, maybe? Machiavelli had that really stark line. A prince must learn how not to be good. How do you think that applies to leaders today?
Yeah, that's a bracing statement. But I mean, when you look around, it's hard to just dismiss it, isn't it? We see these inconsistencies all the time. Leaders say one thing, do another.
Well, our sources suggest something interesting here, that people often only get angry about lies when they fail. A
Oh.
deception that works, that could just become policy, accepted. Machiavelli might say, effectiveness beats moral purity when it comes to power.
Think about politicians pushing austerity while flying private jets, or arresting protesters while quoting Martin Luther King Jr., talking democracy while gerrymandering districts.
Glaring double standards.
Yeah.
There's that phrase from the source material, maskocracy. It speaks right to this. In a world where image is everything, maybe the people who are best at wearing the mask, even if it hides their real aims, they're the ones who get ahead.
Right.
Honesty. In that kind of system, maybe it's just not as valuable as a really good story, a compelling performance.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What do we actually value? Do we want real ethical consistency? Or have we just gotten used to the performance, so we kind of ignore the contradictions underneath?
Which then brings us to fear and love. Another classic Machiavellian theme, but maybe with a modern twist through algorithms.
Okay.
He famously argued, it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. How do algorithms change that game?
That's fascinating to think about in the digital age. It's obviously not physical fear anymore, like a prince's army.
No, no, it's subtler. Fear today might be the anxiety you feel from all the clickbait, the outrage farming content that algorithms push because it gets engagement.
Right. Or the fear of being canceled or shadow
All
banned,
right.
losing your voice online.
Exactly. That's a kind of fear.
And love.
Maybe that gets reduced to chasing likes, validation through shares, or it's transactional, here's a personalized discount code, we love you as a customer.
So the modern princes, the tech leaders, the big influencers, their power isn't armies, it's code. Code that directs our attention.
They control the information flow. Our attention spans, really, that's the new territory.
Yeah.
And the key thing is we often participate willingly, don't we? We click, we scroll, we engage. We want the connection, the information, the entertainment. And in doing so, we kind of opt into the system.
Yeah, we feed the machine. Okay, let's pivot slightly to corporate power. Machiavelli said, "He who seeks to deceive will always find someone who will allow himself to be deceived." That feels tailor-made for modern branding, doesn't it?
Oh, incredibly prescient. Think about greenwashing. Companies presenting this eco-friendly image,
Right.
while their actual environmental impact might be huge. Or rainbow capitalism, using LGBTQ plus support purely as a marketing angle during Pride Month, maybe without real internal change.
It's modern deception, absolutely, aimed at building that positive public image.
And the examples just keep coming. Companies talking up sustainability while their core business is inherently polluting, promoting diversity in ads, but maybe not in their boardroom.
It seems like it's not just about survival anymore, it's deception to scale, to maximize influence and profit.
And the sources pointed out that deep hypocrisy, too, like claiming the company is a family while outsourcing jobs or fighting unions, or running mental wellness campaigns while designing products meant to be addictive.
And here's the uncomfortable part. We often know this, right? As consumers, we kind of sense the inconsistency, but we often still buy the product or use the service. Why?
Well, maybe Machiavelli was right. There's a willingness there. Perhaps the story the company tells, the lie, feels better or aligns with who we want to be more than the complicated, messy truth.
We allow ourselves to be deceived because it's easier or feels better.
Yeah.
So, who are the Machiavellian figures today? It's not just kings and queens anymore. Our sources talked about these new princes.
Right. These are the people who command massive public attention, who wield huge influence, often without any formal political office.
Like who?
Well, think about dominant social media figures, the big tech CEOs, maybe influential media personalities, even some celebrity activists who really shape the conversation.
They rule narratives, attention spans, not necessarily nations, but they shape how we see the world.
Exactly. Their power comes from influencing opinion, influencing behavior,
Yeah.
but without those traditional government checks and balances.
And their accountability is different too, isn't it? They're not voted in or out, mostly.
No, their power depends on keeping that audience engaged, holding on to attention. It's a different dynamic, and it can change fast. And we, the users, the audience, we're constantly choosing these princes with our clicks, our follows, our eyeballs.
There's that other quote from Machiavelli about ambition. Men rise from one ambition to another. First, they seek to secure themselves against attack, then they attack others. It almost feels like you could apply that to some of these figures or even nations today.
You absolutely could. You see it in geopolitics, right?
Hmm.
Nations might form alliances, initially saying it's just for defense. But then those alliances can become platforms for projecting power, for becoming more assertive, maybe even aggressive, seeking advantage. The line between defense and offense gets blurry.
Okay, let's circle back to that really challenging phrase. A prince must learn how not to be good. Our sources were clear this isn't just a license to be evil, right?
No, absolutely not. That's a common misreading. Machiavelli's point, a subtle one, was that a ruler focused solely on traditional virtues, always being honest, always merciful, always keeping promises, might actually harm the state in certain situations.
How so?
Well, sometimes, to protect the state, to ensure its survival and stability, a leader might have to act in ways that seem, well, morally gray. Unnecessary evil, perhaps. But it had to be strategic, calculated, not just personal cruelty or greed.
So the crucial thing is the reason behind it. It should be for the state, for the republic's greater good, not for the leader's own benefit or because they're incompetent.
Exactly. The sources rightly critique how some modern figures seem to use the prince as an excuse for just, well, greedy or incompetent behavior. That misses the point entirely.
It's about using those tough actions as a tool when absolutely necessary for the collective, not as an instinct.
Precisely. Understanding the bad in order to choose the good effectively, or sometimes choose the necessary lesser evil for the state's survival.
Okay, and that ties into the other big idea, often linked to him. The ends justify the means. Again, our sources say he didn't actually write that exact phrase.
He didn't, but the sentiment does align with some of his thinking, particularly in extreme circumstances. The logic is basically, if the state itself is genuinely on the line, its survival threatened.
Then maybe actions usually considered immoral could be justified.
As a last resort, potentially. But, and this is critical, there are huge caveats, conditions that must be met.
Like what? What are those conditions?
Well, first, the end has to be the state's preservation and health, not personal power or glory. Second, the means have to be truly necessary, not just convenient, but essential to achieve that end. Third, the leader has to own the consequences. And finally, it must genuinely be for the state, not just ambition wearing a mask of necessity.
So it's a really heavy burden, a dangerous idea if misused.
Extremely. And it raises those fundamental questions our sources highlighted. Who gets to decide what the end is? Who decides what's necessary? And ultimately, who gets to write the history and judge whether those means were justified?
Those are the big, difficult questions that keep Machiavelli relevant, I suppose. They force us to confront the realities of power.
Absolutely. They haven't gone away.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, there's that final Machiavelli quote about fortune. Fortune is a woman, and if you wish to master her, you must strike and push boldly.
And the interpretation from our sources wasn't necessarily about literal violence, but more about rejecting passivity.
Right, taking action.
Exactly. In a world full of uncertainty, fortune being unpredictable, Machiavelli believed you couldn't just wait for things to happen. You had to be decisive, take risks, act boldly.
That feels pretty relevant now, especially thinking about what the source is called, cowards in costume or algorithms in priest robes. This sense that maybe bold action is needed against hidden or disguised forms of power.
The idea is that real change, asserting control over your destiny or the direction of society, requires that willingness to act, to maybe be disliked, to risk failure, but to do something.
Because power, in his view, isn't just handed over.
No. It's taken, it's held, sometimes through difficult choices and actions.
So maybe the final thought for you, the listener, is to think about that. When is boldness needed? When is it time to stop being passive and actually push for something important, even if it's risky?
Bene fortuna.